are not his, then he can write to you, sir, and go down the privilege line to say that a member is alleging there are words he said that he hasn't said, and then it will be up to the questioner to be able to supply the actual quote which has John Key's words in it, and it will be up to him as the person alleging a breach of privilege to show that he is not the person responsible for that quote. It seems to me that's quite a simple way forward.
I'll hear the Honourable Cherry Brownlee. I don't want to take too much time on this.
No, I realise that, but it is relatively important. Would it be then an acceptable answer from a minister to say, I cannot verify the quote? Because that is a situation that ministers are left in. No minister, let alone the Prime Minister, who is constantly making public statements about a range of things, know at all times, as you would expect the Prime Minister to do, to know at all times exactly what the context was of the quote that's being put to him. And I think the proposal that Mr Hughes puts forward, or the Honourable Darren Hughes puts forward, gets to the level of being ridiculous, that you've got to start dissecting this through letters to the Speaker, for goodness sake. I think, Mr Speaker, the problem becomes that where ministers have been confronted with quotes that are out of context and perhaps even off the topic, there is still an insistence from the Chair that the question is answered, and that, I think, gets to the difficulty of it. So if it is acceptable to say, I can't verify that quote, that would be reasonable.
Sufficient on this. I'd be interested in checking the record today. I don't believe I've insisted any minister answer a question today that contained a quote that, and I've made it very clear that I do not insist on any particular answer out of ministers where opinions are being sought, and I accept that this is always going to be a slightly tricky issue, but it's not that difficult. Members are perfectly at liberty to include what they believe is a quote in a supplementary question, so long as it's crucial to the question being asked, not just an additional additional injection of statement into the question. As long as it's fundamental to the question being asked, they're perfectly at liberty to do that, and the minister being questioned is perfectly at liberty to dispute the quote. That is the risk that members take when they include a quote in a supplementary question that's not been validated. They risk a minister in responding simply disputing the quote, and that is a perfectly fair answer to the question. And so I don't see any great difficulty here. I think today, I don't think I've put ministers under undue pressure at all to answer any of the questions today. If anything, I wouldn't be surprised if the members of the opposition feel the Speaker was a bit hard on them today. But I don't resile from what I've said. I've heard too many questions today that were really simply quite a convoluted political statement rather than a real question. And members need to reflect on that. If they want the Speaker's assistance in getting answers to questions, I'll help them while I ask a simple, clear, hard question, but I cannot assist where they contain quotes in some convoluted question seeking opinions and making political statements. Now, I think we're ready to move on to the... I'll hear the Honourable Leader of the Opposition.
Speaker, I seek the leave of the House to table a document showing consumption taxes as a percentage of GDP in OECD nations 2007,
the source of the
compiled
document?
In my office from the OECD Revenue Statistics 2009.
This was compiled in the office of the Honourable Leader of the Opposition using OECD statistics. Any objection to that document being tabled? There is none. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, if I could draw your attention to Speaker's ruling 156(3). What it says is when a question is based on a quotation or excerpt from a newspaper article, the excerpt must be correct, or if the report is paraphrased in the question, the paraphrase must be a fair one. Now, Mr Speaker, the statement that I made that was paraphrased by the Leader of the Opposition, 156(3). So the quotation that was paraphrased by the Leader of the Opposition I made at the time in relation to GST was that we have one of the lowest GST rates. Now, I've proven absolutely that's correct. The member is now trying to change that. And that's my very point.
Now I ask the Right Honourable Prime Minister to resume his seat, because what the Right Honourable Prime Minister is now doing is debating this issue, and standing orders cannot be used to do that. To debate the issue. I think the members have made their points perfectly clear through the documents that have been tabled. The Right Honourable Prime Minister sought leave to table a document that showed relative GST rates and approval was sought, and that shows, I think, confirms the point the Right Honourable Prime Minister was making. The Honourable Leader of the Opposition sought leave to table a document that compiled the data in terms of percentage of GDP, and he's tabled that. The leave was granted to table that document. Now, remember, the public has heard the exchange. I think they realise the difference in points between percentage of GDP and actual GST rates, and I don't think there's any great difficulty here. And remember, all I would ask is that for question time to be most effective, questions need to be more direct, contain less... political statements are strictly out of order, but I don't intervene all the time because I don't want to be disrupting question time the way I have today, and I regret that very much. And I don't want to be doing that, but it's in the hands of ministers. Ministers can hear when a question is a political statement, they know I'm not going to do much about the answer. But where a straight, clear question is, is asked, that's a different matter. Pardon me, and I don't think we need to take the matter any further today. The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
So, Mr Speaker, I would ask you to go away and reflect later on 156(3). And
I have the standing order. I have the Speaker's ruling right in front of me.
And I'd ask you to do that because if you go back to the point I just read out before, if the report is paraphrased in the question, the paraphrase must be a fair one. And that is my point, Mr Speaker, that the questions coming out of the mouth of the Leader of Opposition are not fair because they make an assertion which is different from the quote, sir.
Order. Members asking questions do need to be careful not to be making assertions in the question, because a question is meant to be a question, not a statement. And I do accept that there is a point there, and what worries me, if I were to apply the standing orders, the particular standing order that covers that issue, I'd be ruling out more than half the questions. And I don't want to be doing that. But at the same time, ministers need to remember that if they feel that a question contains something that is incorrectly made an incorrect allegation as to something that the minister has said, they can simply say that in answering it and clear the matter up and deal with it at that time and say it's not what I said, and that's a perfectly good answer to the question. Point of order, the Honourable Trevor.
Mr Speaker, can I ask you to take your ruling a step further and also to reflect, sir, on the letters that you have received and replied to on the questions of privilege by way of answer? And sir, if members on this side are being required to be accurate in their questions, can I ask that the same standards be applied to answers, because you've repeatedly ruled that they don't?
Well, order. I don't think that is I don't think it's very helpful where the House has got to now. Look, if one looks at the way I'm applying the standing orders to question time, one would have to accept on the strict interpretation of the standing orders, I'm being somewhat harder on answers than I am on questions. My judgment was it was preferable for me not to be ruling out questions that don't really comply with the standing orders. It's better to leave it in the hands of ministers to deal with them, because ministers are perfectly capable when they hear a question that's outside standing orders. They don't need my help to see how to answer that, and it makes question time flow better. And I don't want to come back to applying the standing orders strictly. However, if I feel question times end up too much like today, I will do that. But I've got to say, it's my feeling I've been harder on answers than I have been, because I've insisted on ministers answering questions from time to time. But if I'm to apply the standing orders strictly, many questions will be ruled out, because many of them contain superfluous statements and are often just purely thinly disguised political statements and strictly don't meet the requirements of standing orders at all. And all I'd ask members to think about in response to that last point of order is being careful with what one says in this House is important. I have given the matter a lot of thought, actually, and I will have some discussions with the Standing Orders Committee about it, because I am concerned at times that not enough care is taken with what is said in this House. And so all I would ask is both sides of the House to be careful in what they say and what they allege, because this is Parliament, and we are elected members of the House, and we should be careful with what we say in this place. And that's just an appeal to members to be careful. And I'd like us now to move on to try and get through question time. Is it further point of order? The Right Honourable Prime Minister.
So, Mr Speaker, I would ask you after question time to go away and reflect on this matter, because the statement by Mr Mallard before was in itself an admission that questions are actually being paraphrased incorrectly because they're not happy with answers they've been getting from you, sir.
Now, order. We won't take that any further. And I've got to say this. I've got to say the